The Chinese Grand Prix weekend is underway, and who would have predicted Lewis Hamilton taking pole for the sprint race after struggling to a 10th place finish in Australia? A mistake on Lando Norris' final flying lap kept him out of front row contention. But perhaps that's for the best. Because what could be more thrilling than a Hamilton versus Verstappen showdown at the start? Speaking of the Red Bull driver, Verstappen's second-place start puts him at 18 positions ahead of his new teammate, Liam Lawson. No one expected the New Zealander to challenge Verstappen on track, but after 2 qualifying sessions, he's only outpaced one car, an out-of-sorts hose that the team initially thought was broken. It's been a nightmare start to Lawson's life as a full-time F1 driver, and the pressure is mounting. Is he already in trouble at Red Bull, or should his struggles be taken in context? Coming off a difficult Australian Grand Prix, Lawson was eager to put that disappointment behind him and deliver a performance that would silence Helmut Marko. Ideally, an appearance in the 3rd session of sprint qualifying would have done just that, but even a solid showing in SQ2 could have been enough. What he didn't need was a repeat of his struggles from the season opener. Yet that's exactly what happened. A deleted lap time and issues getting his tyre pressures down for a second flying lap left him short on grip and out of time. Unable to recover, Lawson finished dead last, more than half a second away from safety and just over 0.8, slower than his teammate in the same session. At this point, Lawson can hardly be considered a rookie, having competed in 11 races between 2023 and 2024 for AlphaTauri before its rebrand to Racing Bulls. His struggles in Australia didn't stop in qualifying. Either -12 laps from the finish, he spun off the track, capping off what he described as a really tough weekend. Reflecting on his performance, Lawson admitted, "It's something I'll go over, qualifying, the race, and myself, to reset for China." Now, he faces another reset after a disastrous sprint qualifying. With points in the sprint race out of the question, Lawson's focus must be on regaining confidence and finding his limits in the Red Bull car. Unlike Andrea Kimi Antonelli, who carved through the field for Mercedes last weekend, Lawson simply doesn't seem comfortable or assured enough to make a charge. His priority must be improving before Grand Prix qualifying, where a stronger starting position could help him build momentum. That said, one thing needs to be clear. Lawson is not going to beat Verstappen. In fact, he probably won't even come close. 4 years ago, Verstappen was labeled an over-aggressive upstart, but today, he's universally recognized as the best driver of his generation. Red Bull's target for Lawson is simple: get as close to Max as possible. However, Lawson himself has been blunt about expectations, saying, "If anyone thinks you can just beat Max when you're just coming in, then you're just stupid." For Lawson, this season is about learning, growing, and developing as a driver. But this is Red Bull. Will he be given the time to improve? Or will the team resort to its infamous hire and fire approach when it comes to Verstappen's teammates? The early signs aren't promising. After Australia, Red Bull Motorsport advisor Helmut Marko gave Lawson a 5-race deadline to prove himself. He wanted to show what he could do, and unfortunately, that went wrong, Marko said. "We need to let him cool down and observe his development over the first 3 to 5 races." Last place in sprint qualifying won't have helped his case. The situation unfolding at Red Bull is not what Lawson or Marko had envisioned. What's worse is that the pressure isn't just coming from within the team, it's also building from external sources. But is Lawson's struggle entirely his fault? Or does Red Bull share some of the blame for his performances? Now, let's talk about Red Bull. We all know their history when it comes to driver decisions. If you're not performing at Max Verstappen's level, you're at risk. Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, Sergio Perez. It's been the team's approach for years. And Red Bull's rivals are well aware of that. Take McLaren, for example. They know that a few well-placed comments can keep the pressure on Lawson, reinforcing Red Bull's reputation for ruthlessly replacing Verstappen's teammates. After the Australian Grand Prix, McLaren CEO Zak Brown wasted no time launching some psychological warfare against Red Bull, knowing they will likely be their biggest rivals for both championships this season. Yuki did a great job, Brown told Sky Sports F1 after the race, adding that Tsunoda is probably the guy who should have been in the Red Bull if you look at how he's performed. But they seem to make some strange driver choices from time to time. A seemingly harmless comment, but one that Brown knew would reach the Red Bull camp. These subtle digs might seem insignificant, but enough of them can wear down even the toughest competitors. When asked about Brown's remarks ahead of the Chinese Grand Prix, Lawson was blunt. "I couldn't care less what Zak says," he stated. "I haven't spoken to him. I don't really think ever. And I haven't read any social media for the last 2 weeks." A defensive response, one that likely confirmed to Brown that his words had struck a nerve. Meanwhile, Tsunoda's impressive performances this season only add fuel to the fire. Overlooked for the Red Bull seat, he's proving that decision may have been a mistake. In Australia, he qualified 5th for Racing Bull's minus 13 places ahead of Lawson, with a Q1 lap nearly a second faster than the Red Bull drivers. In the upcoming sprint race, he starts 12 places ahead of Lawson, lapping 4/10 quicker despite being in the supposedly slower car. Tsunoda's contract is up at the end of this season, and if Red Bull truly has no interest in promoting him, he'll need to find a new home outside the organization he's spent his entire career with. When asked about Brown's comments and speculation about replacing Lawson, Tsunoda responded with measured optimism. "It's a bit of a tradition for our group. It's positive, but at the same time, I just have to keep doing what I'm doing." In the end, they chose this lineup last year at the end of the season. Maybe they have a clear plan for the future. I don't know. For now, Lawson is safe because Red Bull seemingly decided long ago that Tsunoda doesn't fit the profile for their first team. That may have been true in 2022, but he's a different driver now. If Red Bull lets him go, he'll be a valuable asset to whichever team picks him up. But back to Lawson, are his struggles entirely his own fault? Clearly, he needs to perform better. However, he can only drive the car he's been given, and right now, that car is a serious problem. Since mid-2023, Red Bull has been masking its car's weaknesses. They even admitted to ignoring Perez's complaints for over a year as the car became increasingly difficult to drive, causing the Mexican driver to fall further behind Verstappen. This past winter, Red Bull's development plan aimed to fix those issues and make the car more manageable, but they haven't succeeded. Watching Lawson in China, he looks uncomfortable. He's constantly fighting the car, hesitant on corner entry, and struggling with the unpredictable rear end. His lap times reflect that uncertainty. How do we know this isn't just a Lawson problem? Because it wasn't just a Perez problem last year. Even Verstappen, arguably the most adaptable driver on the grid, voiced concerns in 2024 about the car's instability. And now, he's saying the same things again. The difference? Verstappen has the talent to extract pace from an unbalanced car in a way no other driver on the grid can. His ability to manage Red Bull's unpredictability makes the car look far better than it actually is. Yes, Lawson is underperforming and must improve. But Red Bull also needs to acknowledge that the car isn't as good as Verstappen is making it seem. Whether it's Perez, Lawson, or Tsunoda in that second seat, they'll all struggle until the team makes the car more drivable. What do you think of Lawson's start to life in Formula One? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, drive safe.